A cruise ship leaves Miami carrying more than 6,000 passengers. For the next 7 days, nearly every cabin is occupied. The bars are crowded. The casino is open. Restaurants are turning over tables. Thousands of passengers are paying for Wi-Fi, drinks, excursions, photographs, spa treatments, shopping, and specialty meals. By the end of the voyage, more than $10 million may have flowed through that single ship. Then Saturday morning arrives. The passengers leave. The cabins become empty. And within a few hours, the owner must begin the entire business again from zero. That is the first thing most people misunderstand about owning a cruise ship. It may look like a hotel, but a hotel does not have to replace every customer on the same morning. It may look like a shopping mall, but a shopping mall does not sail across an ocean burning fuel. And it may look like a transportation business, but transporting passengers is only one part of how the money is made. A modern cruise ship is a floating resort, shopping center, casino, theater, restaurant complex, and transportation network combined into one asset. It is also a financial clock. Every week, thousands of cabins must be sold again. Every week, thousands of passengers must be convinced to board. And every week, the operator must extract enough money from those passengers to cover a machine that may have cost close to $2 billion before it carried its first guest. Royal Caribbean's Star of the Seas entered service in 2025 with approximately 5,600 lower berths. To finance its delivery, Royal Caribbean borrowed $1.6 billion through a 12-year loan, 95% guaranteed by Finland's Export Credit Agency. Across Royal Caribbean's wider order book, committed financing covered approximately 80% of major remaining ship delivery payments. So the owner does not simply buy the ship and begin collecting profit. The ship begins its life with an obligation. It must remain desirable for decades, operate almost continuously, survive changes in fuel prices and regulation, and generate enough cash to pay employees, suppliers, ports, lenders, and shareholders, all while competing against newer ships that have not even been built yet. And the first battle is filling the cabins. A cruise cabin is one of the most perishable products in business. If a supermarket fails to sell a television today, it may sell it tomorrow. If a landlord has an empty apartment this month, it may rent it next month. But when a cruise ship leaves port with an empty cabin, that week of inventory disappears permanently. The engines still run. The officers still work. The entertainment still happens. The ship still visits the same ports. But the opportunity to earn money from that cabin is gone forever. This is why cruise lines may lower ticket prices as the departure date approaches. A discounted passenger can still generate food, labor, and service costs, but an empty cabin generates nothing. More importantly, the passenger may spend hundreds of dollars after boarding. The operator is therefore not always trying to maximize the cabin price. It is trying to maximize the total value of placing one more human being inside the ship. This becomes even more powerful when cabins hold more than 2 people. Cruise companies measure basic capacity using 2 passengers per cabin, known as lower berths. When children or additional adults occupy sofa beds, bunk beds, or 3rd and 4th berths, reported occupancy can rise above 100%. Royal Caribbean reported occupancy of 109.7% in 2025. Carnival reported 105%. That does not mean passengers were sleeping in hallways. It means many cabins carried more than 2 people. Those extra passengers can be highly valuable. The cabin is already being cleaned. The ship is already sailing. The show is already scheduled. Adding a child or 3rd adult increases food and service costs, but it also creates another customer for shore excursions, drinks, internet, photographs, attractions, shopping, and future cruises. A cabin that appears to sell for $2,000 may ultimately produce far more than $2,000 in total spending. And that reveals the real product. The cruise ticket feels like the main transaction because it is the largest payment passengers see before boarding. Economically, it functions more like an admission fee. In 2025, passenger tickets produced approximately 70% of Royal Caribbean's revenue. The remaining 30% came from onboard and other revenue. Carnival showed a similar structure. roughly 65% from tickets and 35% from onboard and other spending. Once on board, the passenger enters a highly controlled marketplace. There may be complimentary food, but there are premium restaurants. There may be free water, but there are beverage packages. The ship may visit a port, but excursions cost extra. The passenger can disconnect from the internet, but many will buy Wi-Fi. There are shops, casinos, spas, photographs, private experiences, reserved attractions, insurance, and premium seating. Not every one of these businesses is operated directly by the cruise line. Independent concessionaires may operate certain stores or services, absorb the operating costs, and pay the cruise company a fee or percentage of revenue. In those cases, the cruise line becomes a landlord inside its own vessel. The ship is not simply carrying customers to a destination. It is carrying them through a sequence of spending opportunities. And increasingly, the spending begins before departure. Royal Caribbean reported that nearly half of its onboard revenue in 2025 was booked before the cruise, with 90% of those pre-cruise purchases completed digitally. Before the passenger sees the cabin, the company may already have sold the drink package, Wi-Fi plan, restaurant reservation, and excursion. This changes the psychology of a voyage. Money spent weeks before departure feels separated from money spent on board. Once the vacation begins, the passenger starts spending again. The cabin brings the customer inside. The real objective is to monetize the week. To understand the scale, consider a hypothetical ship with 5,600 lower berths, similar to one of Royal Caribbean's largest vessels. At Royal Caribbean's 2025 occupancy rate of 109.7%, the ship would carry approximately 6,140 passengers. Over a 7-night cruise, that produces almost 43,000 passenger days. Across Royal Caribbean's entire business in 2025, total revenue averaged roughly $306 per passenger day. Applying that company-wide average to our hypothetical ship produces approximately $13 million in revenue for one 7-night voyage. If the ship completed 50 similar voyages in a year, total annual revenue could approach $650 million. That is an estimate, not a reported result for any individual ship. Royal Caribbean operates multiple brands, itineraries, destinations, and ship sizes, and its total revenue includes activities that cannot be assigned perfectly to one vessel. But the illustration shows why a major cruise ship can appear to be one of the most powerful assets in hospitality. More than $600 million a year can flow through one floating property. But flow is not profit. Using the same company-wide averages, more than $6 million of that hypothetical $13 million week could disappear into direct cruise operating expenses before accounting for corporate marketing, administration, depreciation, interest, and taxes. Travel agents receive commissions. Ports collect fees. Credit card companies take a percentage. Thousands of crew members must be paid. Passengers and staff must be fed. Fuel must be purchased. Entertainment must be produced. Supplies must be loaded. Waste must be processed. The vessel must be insured, cleaned, repaired, secured, and continuously monitored. Royal Caribbean reported $17.9 billion in total revenue in 2025, but direct cruise operating expenses alone were approximately $9.1 billion. Another $2.2 billion went to marketing, selling, and administration, while depreciation and amortization reached about $1.7 billion. The ship can generate an astonishing amount of money while consuming an astonishing amount at the same time, and some of its largest costs remain almost invisible to the passengers. Fuel is one of the most obvious expenses, but even fuel demonstrates how complicated cruise economics can become. A hotel remains in one location. A ship must move thousands of passengers, crew members, supplies, freshwater systems, restaurants, pools, theaters, machinery, and hotel infrastructure across the sea. Traveling faster generally consumes more fuel. Changing routes can increase distances. Storms may require diversions. Geopolitical instability can make a region unusable. Environmental regulations can add emission-related costs. Carnival reported consuming approximately 2.8 million metric tons of fuel across its fleet in 2025. It also reported $91 million of costs associated with the European Union emissions trading system, up from $46 million in 2024 as the regulation continued to phase in. But fuel is only part of the pressure. Cruise ships require regular repairs, technical inspections, refurbishments, and dry docks. During a dry dock, the vessel is removed from normal service, so the hull, propulsion systems, steering equipment, safety systems, machinery, and public spaces can be inspected or upgraded. The owner pays for the work, while also losing the revenue the ship would have generated. Then there is depreciation. Cruise companies generally spread the accounting value of a ship across several decades. But depreciation represents a real economic problem. The ship will age. Newer competitors will appear. Passenger expectations will change. Restaurants, cabins, entertainment areas, and technology must be refreshed if the vessel is to maintain premium prices. An older ship may have less debt, but it can consume more fuel and require more maintenance. A new ship may operate more efficiently and attract higher prices, but it arrives with an enormous capital cost. The apparent advantage always contains another weakness. This is why the age, efficiency, financing, brand, and itinerary of the ship can matter more than its physical size. A giant ship is only powerful when demand is strong enough to fill it repeatedly. When demand weakens, scale becomes weight. Cruise companies receive another advantage that most businesses would love to have. Customers pay before receiving the product. Passengers usually make a deposit when booking and pay the remaining balance before departure. Many also pre-purchase drinks, excursions, restaurants, internet, and other services. At the end of its 2025 financial year, Carnival held $7.2 billion in customer deposits. The company explains that advance receipts can support operations, debt repayment, investment, and other uses of cash until the related cruise occurs. In simple terms, passengers temporarily help finance the company. But customer deposits are not the same as earned revenue. Until the cruise happens, the company owes the passenger a vacation or, depending on the circumstances and contract, a refund or credit. That creates a hidden vulnerability. When bookings are strong, deposits provide billions of dollars in working capital. When cruises are canceled, the direction of the cash can reverse. Instead of collecting new deposits and recognizing old deposits as revenue, the company may face refund demands while future bookings weaken. This is where cruise ownership becomes far more dangerous than hotel ownership. A hotel can lose one property to a local disruption, while its other hotels continue operating elsewhere. But a global event can stop dozens of cruise ships almost simultaneously. When the vessels stop, nearly every important part of the economic model breaks at once. The first loss is the ticket. Without passengers, there is no fare revenue. The second loss is everything the passenger would have purchased after boarding. No drinks, no casino activity, no excursions, no specialty dining, no spa visits, no photographs, no retail purchases. Two revenue streams disappear together. Then the company may need to return customer deposits. New bookings slow down. Travel agents stop producing commissions because there are fewer cruises to sell. Suppliers lose volume. Ports lose visitors. Crew contracts are disrupted. But the ship does not become free because it is empty. It still needs security, insurance, technical maintenance, essential crew, docking arrangements, inspections, and management. Machinery must be preserved. Debt interest continues. Certain shipyard commitments may remain. Corporate staff and reservation systems still exist. The company begins burning cash. To survive, it may borrow money. But distressed borrowing is usually more expensive. It may issue new shares, reducing existing shareholders' ownership. It may sell ships, cancel projects, delay deliveries, or remove employees. When operations eventually return, the passengers return first. The financial damage stays much longer. Higher debt creates higher interest. Asset sales reduce capacity. Deferred investment can weaken a product. New financing absorbs money that could have funded new ships or returned cash to shareholders. A temporary operational failure becomes a multi-year balance sheet problem. Carnival's experience showed exactly how fast that chain reaction can spread. In 2019, Carnival appeared to be an exceptionally strong business. Its ships produced approximately $20.8 billion in annual revenue. The company earned almost $3 billion in net income. Customer deposits were flowing in, vessels were sailing, and onboard spending had become an increasingly important part of the model. Then, in March 2020, global cruise operations stopped. Carnival's revenue for the year collapsed to approximately $5.6 billion. Its net result moved from a profit of almost $3 billion to a loss exceeding $10.2 billion. In the final quarter of 2020, the company reported an average cash burn rate of approximately $500 million per month. That was more than $16 million disappearing every day. The company raised approximately $19 billion through financing transactions after the shutdown began. During 2020, it issued $15 billion of long-term debt and raised billions more through stock offerings and short-term borrowing. Carnival's debt position transformed almost immediately. Short-term borrowings and total long-term debt increased from approximately $11.5 billion at the end of 2019 to almost $27 billion 1 year later. The ships had stopped producing vacations. They had not stopped creating obligations. Carnival also accelerated plans to remove 19 ships from its fleet. Those vessels represented approximately 13% of its pre-shutdown passenger capacity, but had produced only 3% of its operating income in 2019. That was not merely a desperate sale of assets. It revealed which ships had become economically weak. The older vessels still carried passengers and generated revenue, but after fuel, maintenance, staffing, and other costs, their contribution to profit was disproportionately small. Removing them allowed Carnival to reduce capacity while eliminating some of its least efficient assets. The company eventually recovered. By 2025, Carnival was generating record revenue of approximately $26.6 billion and net income of about $2.8 billion. Passenger ticket revenue reached $17.4 billion, while onboard and other revenue reached approximately $9.2 billion. The operating business had returned, but the balance sheet still carried the history of the shutdown. That is the most important lesson from Carnival's collapse and recovery. A cruise company can repair demand faster than it repairs its finances. Passengers may return within a few years, while the debt raised during the crisis can remain for much longer. The vacation ends after 7 days. The financing does not. In the best-case scenario, a new cruise ship enters service during strong demand. It commands premium ticket prices, sails above 100% occupancy, and generates heavy onboard spending. Its size spreads fixed costs across thousands of passengers, while newer engines and technology reduce fuel use per berth. The ship becomes a powerful cash-generating asset. In a realistic successful outcome, the vessel still faces discounted sailings, maintenance, drydocks, changing fuel prices, commissions, weather disruptions, regulation, and debt payments. But demand remains consistent enough, and passengers spend enough on board for the ship to justify its enormous cost. The negative outcome can look deceptively healthy. The ship appears full, but cabins have been heavily discounted. Onboard spending is weak. Fuel costs rise. Maintenance increases. The vessel continues generating hundreds of millions in revenue, yet produces far less profit than its size suggests. Then there is the failure scenario. Demand collapses. The ship stops sailing. Ticket revenue disappears. Onboard spending disappears. Deposits may reverse. Debt, insurance, maintenance, and essential operating expenses continue. The owner is left with a billion-dollar asset that loses money while standing still. So the economics of owning a cruise ship are not really about owning a ship. They are about controlling a temporary population. For 7 days, the operator controls where thousands of people sleep, eat, shop, drink, gamble, connect to the internet, and purchase entertainment. The ticket brings them inside, But the real business is converting their time on board into revenue while spreading the ship's enormous fixed costs across as many passengers as possible. Then the voyage ends, the passengers disappear, and the clock resets. A cruise ship is not a floating hotel. It is a billion-dollar marketplace that must be rebuilt every single week.